The Animal Family, Chapter 2, The Hunter and the Mermaid, Part 2. No matter how cold it was, the mermaid never wore any clothes herself. Sometimes she would take a red fox fur and tie it around her wrist for a bracelet. And because once, out on the seal rocks, she had a wreath of seaweed on her head, the hunter carved her one out of myrtle wood, with leaves and berries, almost like the real ones. She wore it at dinner sometimes. When it rained, the hunter stayed inside. He would carve something, or sharpen his axe, or make himself arrows, or do housework, or play games with the mermaid to keep himself from being bored. The mermaid couldn't understand why he wanted to be inside when it rained. To her, it made no difference. One day, when he came in after being caught in a hard rain, she said to him, touching the sodden leather of his shirt, "It's because you wear clothes. The rain gets them all cold and heavy. If you didn't wear clothes, you wouldn't mind the rain," she said. Nor could she understand why he got bored. She never understood, even, what it meant to be bored. She said, "If you're tired of doing something, why, you can do something else. Why do you have to be doing something anyway?" She would lie curled up in the window seat. That had a big window of glass and wood from a ship, and a window seat by it, all full of furs, and would look out at the sea, or doze, or just be there. She never seemed to feel that she needed to say anything. She would sit silent for hours and then answer him when he said something, with as much animation as if she had been talking all the time. Sometimes her saying nothing, doing nothing, troubled the hunter. "What are you thinking?" he would ask. Now and then the mermaid told him, but usually she would answer with her old, "Oh well," and the little indifferent wrinkling of her nose, which was the equivalent of a shrug to him. The hunter and the mermaid played checkers and jackstraws and a game like horseshoes, throwing rings over a stake. But they quit the ring game because the mermaid missed so seldom. When once in 20 or 30 times the ring would bounce off the stake, she would laugh and say perplexedly, "I did it wrong. I don't understand it. I did it wrong." But whenever anything went wrong, she laughed and thought it was funny. Once, shifting the horn and the shells over the mantel, she fell and dented the horn. She broke 2 shells and knocked the breath out of herself. As soon as she got her breath back, she began to laugh. It was almost the only time the hunter had seen her lose her breath. She could hold her breath for half an hour, like a whale or a dolphin. She would hold her breath to amuse him, occasionally pointing to her closed mouth and narrowed nostrils. And she could balance herself on anything, juggle anything, like a seal. She learned the hunter's language so well that at last she thought in it, except when she was in the water. "When the water touches me, I think the way I always thought," she said. She taught the hunter a little more of her own language, but it was hard for him to say. When she spoke it, it was like water gurgling in the cleft of the rocks. But whatever she said sounded like that. She had learned the hunter's words, but she said them to the sea's tune. She taught the hunter to say in dolphin and seal, in case he were ever swept out to sea, "Help me, help me, help me to the beach." Learning that sentence in dolphin was the hardest thing the hunter had ever done. He told her indignantly, "You have to say it with the roof of your mouth and your nose plugged and so high you can't even hear yourself say it." That's right," said the mermaid. "Now you're getting it." She liked dolphin and looked down on seal's language. "Dolphins say as much as the people say," she told the hunter, "but most of the words in dolphin are too high for us. We can't say them. But seals, they don't say much. Seal is really easy. You can learn all there is to seal in a week." The hunter would tell her about his father and mother and the years the 3 of them had lived there. There was a thin, square piece of lace left from those years. It was his mother's handkerchief. So the hunter and the mermaid, it was a great treasure for them. "How did they ever make all those little holes in it?" she said. She asked the hunter, but he didn't know. The mermaid tried to imagine what their life had been like, but it was hard for her. "You're the only man I've ever seen," she said. except for drowned ones who were dead. So he carved for her out of walnut a statue of his father and a statue of his mother. When she saw his mother's long skirts, she said, "Why, she's like me." But when she saw the carving of his father, she laughed and laughed. "You didn't have to do that one," she said. The hunter didn't know what she meant or why she laughed, and looked at her uneasily and disappointed, so that she kissed him and said, "It's just like you. There's no difference at all. It's just like you." Then he understood. She would tell him the sea people's stories, and he would tell her the fairy tales his mother had told him. When he said the nursery rhymes to her, she would laugh as if she were being tickled. She loved to be tickled, too. "I like it when it sounds the same," she said. "Show me how to make it sound the same myself." After a while, she knew all the nursery rhymes by heart. Sometimes, on a stormy day, working away at something, the hunter would look up to hear what she had said, and she would be lying there looking out at the waves, saying softly, "Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock." Whenever anything reminded the hunter of his father and mother, you could see that he missed them, and he longed to have them alive again. The mermaid would tell him about her childhood and her family and her sister. She had a sister, but she was a dead one. But she never seemed to want any of it back. The hunter said, puzzled, "Don't you wish your sister were still here?" The mermaid answered, "She was then. Why do you want her to be now, too?" The hunter remembered that he had never seen the mermaid cry. He thought, with a little shiver, "Do mermaids cry?" The only thing the mermaid was afraid of were big sharks and killer whales. "They will kill us if they catch us," she told him. But she was afraid of them in a matter-of-fact, kind of indifferent way, and said that none of her people really thought about them or hated them. "Why should we?" she said. "They eat us the way we eat fish. The fish don't hate us. They swim next to us when they know we're not hungry, and when we're hungry, they get away from us if they can. Everything lives on everything anyway." At first, she would say, "I'll go home," and when she went back to visit her family, but after a while, she called the house with the hunter her home. The first day she was back from the sea, she would lie in the window seat and shift back and forth and shake her head with a puzzled look. She told the hunter, "In the sea, everything moves, and when I come back to where it's all still, it makes me dizzy. Everything seems to roll back and forth. I can't get any of it to stay still." In a little, she laughed and said, "When I tell them about home, they don't believe me. They don't believe that we have a fire. I tell them, but they don't believe in fire. I show them how it lights our window at night, but they think it's like the waves in the summer when they shine, or like a star in the sky." The hunter and the mermaid were so different from each other that it seemed to them, finally, that they were exactly alike, and they lived together, and they were happy.